side, but a better win rate on blue side. Meanwhile, FPX, blue side matters to them a lot. They're 11-8 versus 6-13. That's a pretty big sample size. So a winning record on blue side and a very a more heavily losing record on red. So quite interesting to see if FPX can cash in with this blue side game.
There we are. Draft for game number 1 already underway. Kair's Talia and Jwei's Nico, the most notable bans from JDG on that red side now. Those are the things that they have to take into account and potentially leave open more powerful selections like the Rumble. Going to be locked in first for Sheer. It's been a very powerful top laner. All is going to respond to it, though, with that Scion, which will be a little bit more of that weaker side tank. And we'll see what gets paired up alongside it. You know, seeing a jungle here for Shun would make a lot of sense.
I like Lilia. I think that if you have a Scion of the game, Lilia can be quite good, as both champs love when you are able to just scale forever throughout a fight. That said, it is going to be the Shun to Fury. So curious if it ends up being the game for that Shadow Pantheon. Been a really big pick for him, as it is his most played. Not the best win rate, but definitely something where, at least I check, I think it's been pretty decent for Shadow. And Shun, of course, 7 plays, and then the Fury sitting at 5-2. As, yep, there's the Pantheon. And do we see, wondering if we see some crowd control out of the mid lane? Or if we see maybe a Rise come in. Do have to think about maybe getting a Leandri's champ. Think about the Scion, too.
Yeah, Rise and Fury has also been a pretty solid 2v2 pair, so wouldn't be surprised to see Kair try to take this away. It's one of his more popular, one of his more favorite champions that he's played in this season as well. I'd imagine we just try to match top sides to round this out, allow for the bot lane to get those last rotations.
B base scout, take Galio mid. I actually like Galio in this scenario. You do get outranged by the Rise, but it gives you a really strong early game. Feel really good against both the Rumble and the Rise for that early mid-game spike. And also makes Pantheon's life really tough in these fights. I think that Pantheon, a champion that I've seen for me getting drafted a little bit too early, if you're able to control the front line against a Pantheon, he really struggles in those games. And champions like Scion, Galio, really good at that. So now JDG going to need to find some damage, as they don't have a ton of damage showing between their two solo lanes. Of course, the Fury going to help out with that. Meanwhile, FPX, I think, getting any and all setup for the Rumble going to be helping out, because right now they only have point-and-click stuns. So finding some AoE stuns or CC might be really nice here for FPX.
Yeah, already I set up a situation, though, for Peyz to really pop off when you have these two tanks protecting you on the back line. We've seen a lot more of these kind of poke-oriented, lane-dominant bottom lanes now that we are on the Spirit Blossom patch. So the Ashe and the Zeri both taken away. Those are things you could pair alongside Enchanters. We're also seeing the Kai'Sa banned away from Awesome. I think Misfortune Prio definitely rises a little bit here with some of these major AD carries taken off the board.
Little curious that Peyz decided to ban the Kai'Sa. I feel like it's a champ that would be really nice for JDG's composition. That said, just maybe not wanting to blind it. Can understand that. Kai'Sa does shred tanks, so if you don't want to blind it, would be a nice pick for Awesome and FPX. Also, been a really good champ for Awesome and FPX, actually, thinking back. Yeah, he has 6 Kai'Sa games and 3-3, but I can remember a couple where he popped off. So as we have the rest of the ADs, I gotta say, I kind of like Jhin right now for Awesome and FPX. I know that you're into Scion plus Galio, so you might be sitting at home like, what? But at least gives some setup coming in for Rumble. As, oh boy. Kalista was up, Grapes. This might just be the pick here for Peyz.
We saw the clip. That has anything to tell us about it. It means that we could be in for another treat here, as Peyz gets his Kalista once more. Champion that he, of course, performed it with against Weibo Gaming in their last win.
I think the Ashe Kai'Sa bans make a lot more sense now. As that makes for a rather good Kalista game. Gotta say, the good matchups, I mean, I'm thinking you could play something like, you don't want to play Lucian into Scion Galio. I think MF into Scion Galio is pretty tough too, even though it's a good matchup in the Kalista bot. Tristana even, you'd spike later on with the LDR, so it looks like they're just going to bring some CC and more circles. As Misfortune locked in now, do we go for the Alistar or something like a Nautilus? As I think Alistar, the really premier support we've seen emerge. But Nautilus will at least give you a point and click for Kalista.
Yeah. Get the point and click on the Peyz when he's jumping all around in those team fights, has that full lethal tempo proc. Making sure you can at least get a little bit of CC onto that champion, which leaves the last pick over to Missing.
Braum.
I know you love
Missing
the Braum.
is based, he plays Braum. I think Renata's fine too. I really like Braum this game because you are really, really good in the MF Nautilus. Like one of Braum's happiest lanes. I think it's kind of slept on in terms of Kalista. Not a lot of auto attacks follow up on Winter's Bite, but I think it would have been good. You can block the projectiles of Rise too. Anyway, enough with that sell. Hostile takeover.
They got the
see if that's big.
For Braum
Yeah, I had the chill. We'll see if it's big. I will say, a little bit concerned for JDG about canceling MF ult. It takes hostile takeover some time to get there, and Scion Galio, it's kind of telegraphed. If MF is actually able to get a setup off in the fight, I think it's definitely going to be flash or resources being used by JDG to try and take that down. And I think JDG, identity for them, we have 2 beefcakes, and we're just going to let Callista get a pin cushion going. And it's a kind of a squishy team here for FPX, so I think real potential in the early mid-game for JDG to get ahead early and deathball from there. Whereas FPX, I do think that with Rumble Rise, if they actually get some time, get to 2, 3, 4 items, they actually really outscale the Scion and Galio.
Yeah.
So might be something to look out for, because Scion is a hell of a scaler, but man, that max health damage and percent pen of the Rumble kit now really makes this matchup different than what we used to see in like Season 5, when those things just didn't exist in Rumble's kit.
Yeah, the itemization that you can build, and of course just how strong these solo laners can get, do mean that the tanks become a little bit less scary than, you know, you might originally kind of think of them when looking at this composition, especially against an AD carry like Misfortune, who's not necessarily that tank shredder. So it's going to be Awesome's job to just dish out a decent amount of DPS, specifically to the back line here with the bullet times, and then allow for the solo laners to kind of take care of the rest here if you are FunPlus Phoenix. Remember, they won this series last time around against JD Gaming. These teams have played very close in terms of record over the last 10, 11 series or so, which is over half of the season at this point in time. And so for both of these teams, a win going to be very important. FPX want to try to climb up into that top 6. JDG want to lock themselves a spot in top 4. Both different goals, but goals all the same of being a real threat here in the LPL Split 2 playoffs once we get down to it at the end of the month. And let's do it, Cubby. We are on to the race for game number 1 of our first series of the day. JDG versus FPX starts right now.
Yeah, just see JDG utilizing some of that early strength. And again, for me... Oh, wait.
A little delayed on that.
You know what, Grapes? I casted an ACL earlier today. That's going to be my cope, because I missed out on the Giants for that one. But, of course, we have the graph. I disagree with the graph again. I think JDG is the one that spikes earlier. Again, Callista could be big late. I am curious. I think that we do see, like... There is scaling on JDG. There is scaling on FPX. I think it's going to be interesting to see like what's easier or like to do later on. I see a Galio, and I think Scout's abilities to get push and make plays is going to be really real. As Care might be trying to spot this out. They haven't yet. We do see Callista and Nautilus actually, or sorry, Callista and Nautilus, MF Nautilus trying to pull this wave, which might make for some interesting stuff in the bot lane.
So do FPX know that Shun just stole away that Raptor camp? We'll see in just a little bit. As
Shadow does not.
Shadow decides to path after taking these wolves. It looks like he might just be headed right down here. So that could be a pretty bad situation opening up here for the FPX jungler already.
Of course, we might have Shun trying to drop this, which it looks like he has to. You do not win level 2 against Pantheon. So Shadow going to play around with that, but some good wards dropped by JDG. Shadow not aware of either of these. And of course, Callista, Renata getting pushed early on. FPX, their bot lane tried to pull the wave. They didn't fast push it, and JDG were able to come back into the lane later on, utilize the double range to actually get pushed. And now Missing can go help Shadow, which is prompting, or help Shun against Shadow. Prompting Shun to pull that buff again.
Shun does have a smite, so this should be a pretty easy takeaway.
That's
already
secure, yeah.
2 camps taken out for FPX, as Shun steals both those into the bottom side away, and Shadow is now very separated from the rest of his jungle, so he's in a lot of trouble at just level 2.
Of course, Scout actually manages to find a little bit of a buff or two onto the rise, as Shun playing defense.
Feels like right now FPX going to just try to go for broke on this bot lane play, but it's going to be a 3v3 that opens up. Peyz already cleanses and takes a decent amount of damage, but now their focus can fully go towards the Pantheon, and Shadow has to flash on out. Another set of resources burned for FunPlus Phoenix. They're already behind in terms of the jungle camp game, and now they're losing a lot of time on the map with this Pantheon, desperate to try to find something.
This is wild, actually, as we're going to have Shadow try and help escort this wave in. Should be enough waves, or enough strength in the wave where they're able to get that one end back. But, of course, Shadow going to be pretty far behind now in this matchup. Ooh. That was a trade.
See you, Sheer. Got the Conqueror proc here. We're going for the full tank shred build.
Looks like 100th game in LPL, I'm going to guess, up there. Congrats to Sheer again. A pretty exciting young top laner, quite frankly. Someone that I feel like, you know, found his way onto this team. Of course, not exact. Like, Sheer was on a stronger team previously. Didn't win over that starting spot. So with FPX, we'll have to try and turn that narrative. Doing a decent job, though, so far on this team. And has definitely shown his chops on the Rumble. I know it's only been 2 games of Rumble for Sheer this split, but it has been 2 wins for him. So a pick that's been denied quite a bit, and rightfully so.
We didn't even talk about it much during the pre-show because there were so many other things to hit on, Cubby, but this is the Sheer revenge game as well, right? You know, JDG was where he was last year. Again, as you mentioned, splitting for that time with Flandra. I know
I didn't know if it was that or top. I had a moment, Grapes. You're saving me here.
Yeah, they missed out on Worlds again this year, which resulted in them kind of blowing up their roster. And led to Sheer now getting a full starting opportunity on FPX, and it seems like they really want to build around him as a core part of their team. I guess him and Jwei at this point. Both younger players that have a lot of potential, and we're already seeing it here.
Yeah.
Again, we haven't seen too much from Sheer in the back half of this split, but definitely at the start, he was really one of their strongest members and somebody they really like to play around.
Yeah, I like the shout out of Jwei. He's been playing great of late. Again, was the LPL first team support this past week, but also that piece that FPX has had for so long now in Care. Like that piece they've really tried to develop on their own to find Sheer and Jwei with this team. I know Shadow and Awesome bring a little bit more experience, and ever since Awesome got back into this lineup with Jwei for the split, definitely him and Shadow was the secret sauce for these guys, and some of the youngins to start to look pretty good on the Rift. So it has been good looks for FPX. As currently Shadow seeing if he can deny a look in the top lane, as the match was matched by FPX, as Peyz and Missing made their way up here. Awesome and Jwei responded. Shadow gonna make sure that his bot lane doesn't get dove up here.
Yeah, nicely done by Shadow to make sure he didn't fall too far behind and farm kind of off of that initial play. Obviously, there's still camps for Shun to take on that bottom side of the jungle. Take that crab away as well, but overall, this, after losing your red buff and losing kind of an entire quadrant of your jungle and being put very far behind in terms of tempo, not bad, all things considered here for Shadow, and it's really going to come down to if they can find plays with this Pantheon here in the early game. You see that spawn of Grubs coming up in 2 minutes time as the bot lane for JDG has actually rotated mid as they send Scout up to the top side.
I'm really curious if Shun actually starts the Dragon here, as I think the Peyz and Missing walking down here, that makes sense for me. Rise, of course, will have to respect this, but can be pick up the wave under the turret as a plate does go over to FPX. But the swap from JDG, I like this play from them. I think Galio didn't really lose much on the top side. It picks up a cannon wave. Peyz and Missing were able to play a wave fast, then play towards the neutral objective on the map, which FPX and Shadow, just where they're at, can't contest. So nice pickup. I like the rotation out of JDG a lot.
Now they're going to look for a play here, but Shadow's trying to match onto Ala. However, he flashes away and joins the rest of his team. It's now a 4v2 that is opened up for JDG, and they certainly are in favor of a situation like that. Looks like Sheer's going to try to just leave Shadow out to dry, going to try to find maybe a little bit more damage or maybe burn a summoner spell on somebody, but it's not going to happen. First blood goes over to JD Gaming. It is Shun to pick up the kill.
Yeah, I really don't get that play from Shadow. I actually think the JDG, I mean, they lose out a little bit on mid from this, but you can see when that Dragon's taken, and again, just given that the bot lane went from mid to bot, you got to be careful on that wave. You just cannot afford to make a play like that. Alva flashing out of the Equalizer so he doesn't get melted by the Rumble. Really prevents the potential death and ensures a free kill for his team.
Yeah, a bit of a questionable one there. I guess they were more confident in being able to burn Ala down than they actually were able to do, as the Scion lived for a lot longer than maybe they were anticipating, which resulted in JDG, of course, picking up that first blood. They're going to get that kill onto Shun, so the Nefiri is off to the races. I feel like a lot of the time you need to see this champion get a couple of kills early for it to have that massive late-game carry effect that we've seen, especially towards the beginning of split number 2, as the champion has fallen a bit in terms of priority. But Shin's going to feel very happy about where he is in the game right now. He's hovering around that top side because the Grubs have just spawned, and it should be fully JDG controlled if they can get this midway push in.
Again, really feel like FPX's comp needs a little bit of time to get going. Like at the moment, just how... Oh, yep, we're going to make a cross-map play. Alva, no flash.
We'll see if round 2 works any better. Sheer does have that Conqueror fully procced. The Roar of the Slayer is going to slow him down a little bit, but it's going to result in Shadow picking up the kill. So they do get eventually what they came for, but it's going to come at the cost of the Grubs going over to Shun.
I like this play from FPX. I don't think that there's any way they can contest these grubs. Kalista very strong at this point. The tankiness of a Scion and a Galio a little bit too much for them to get through. As Rise at a happier point in the matchup, he can more safely clear the wave. But, of course, if he does go into melee range, the Galio can always get stuck. That really isn't a world they want to be in. They want to let Rise get to those 2 items being completed, right? So I think the trade very appropriate here. So JDG, the win out on the map, but hey, at least Always Flash was punished. Nice play from both teams.
Now look at that gold lead, that CS lead that is opened up on the top side here. Sheer, almost 30 farm. Ahead of Ala, kind of getting the better of these map rotations as the lane assignments have been kind of swapping back and forth a little bit more often than you typically see in a game of League of Legends, and that has benefited the Rumble tenfold in this situation. And he's right now the player that FPX does have to really try to focus on getting further ahead if they want to have a good shot here in this game, number 1. As Sean is really off and running in the jungle, picking up steal after steal. Now another blue buff taken away for him, and that makes Shadow not a very happy camper.
Well, yeah, that's a bit of a bummer, but still, JDG, I think that all the strength really on them at the moment. Again, might be pretty close to even on the scoreboard. I really feel like it is all JDG if we were to fight on the Rift, so going to be on FPX again, get those items, try and scale up a little bit. We'll say a really happy Galio game, being into the Rumble and the Rise. You can just see Scout able to sprint towards that magic resist. Likely going to be stacking that up early on, and again, can be rather immobile in the side lane, and really good if he gets any help from Shun at just trying to assassinate Rumble and Rise in the side. Definitely something that FPX is going to have to play defense against later on. And turns a point of weakness for Scout. I think that, you know, he's been pretty vulnerable at getting picked out insides for JDG in games that pass, but can turn a weakness into a strength here, as of course playing towards the Galio, a real option for Shun after these outer turrets go down and we start to break out on the map.
Yeah, I mean, we're about a minute again away from when that next dragon spawns. A lot of onus will be on Scout, kind of for JDG on the Galio, making plays for his team again. He's somebody that, despite his high pedigree, his high name value, and he was one of the pieces that really formulated this JDG roster upon the offseason really becoming a thing for this team. He's, I think, struggled a little bit in terms of what he's been able to accomplish in the last couple of weeks, being caught out multiple times. So now on this Galio, he's on much more of a utility-focused position and has a very different responsibility than some of the other carries that he's played in the past. And we'll see if that results in a better look overall for JDG.
Yeah, I for sure have been a bit disappointed in Scout, as he is a player that, again, as you said, carries pedigree, rightfully so, and just has not been able to meet it so far. So we'll have to see if he's able to turn things around in this game. I do think his Galio is a pretty big pick for him. Has been quite good in the past, but again, I've seen Scout have a bad Azir game of late, and that's a champion that I've always associated with Scout. So at the moment, though, for JDG, nice thing for them. I think that Shun has been a really positive and consistent factor, and definitely a game where him on the Nefiri can be enabled.
Yeah, I know, another player that was kind of bouncing around rosters last year has found a real good starting spot on JDG for 2025. Make the most of that opportunity, and really big position of power in this game too. If we're looking more to a micro sense, as he's on the Nefiri, already has a kill, already has that Eclipse in his inventory, and they're going to try to start up and complete their second dragon of the game. Now let's see if FPX does anything to try to contest. Jwei and Awesome are here. Peyz call has come out. They're going to try to knock up the Nautilus, but it is buffered by the Dredge line, and that means that the rest of the response is in. Awesome's very low. Sean's going to dash on top of him and take the Misfortune down, and Ala, all the way from the top side of the map, will secure the feats of warfare and force Care to use that Realm Warp to escape. Dragon going over to JDG.
I am a bit surprised that FPX fought that, as it is only the second dragon. Care just finished Aroa, so he's far from being strong. BT was not in the inventory of Awesome when that fight started. They were not in position and were staring down an Eclipse Nefiri. So in terms of timers and being respectful in terms of finding a fight, I did not think that that was the time for FPX. They took it anyway and were punished heavily by JDG, as a really good fight from Scout and Ala, holding that front line, creating space for Peyz. And yeah, we saw those pin cushions get stacked.
So, another couple of kills going over to Shun and to JDG overall. Another look at this one. It was a nice micro set from Jwei here, canceling some stuff. The bullet time doing a lot of damage, but Shun just dashed on top of him at the perfect time.
I mean, just where the fight was awesome, and Jwei fully focused down, and there was no response available from FPX on the top side. So I think that Ala and Scout coming in, I mean, they bought a lot of space, and Awesome had to flash awkwardly. He gets melted down in the pit. Again, just the setup for JDG, like, they're the ones that were on the objectives with control. And you're going up against a Fury Callista at that time with the Fury on Eclipse. I think it's really hard to 50-50 that objective. Your conditions are not good walking in, so just give it away. Go get something else. I do think that was, again, not FPX's time to fight. The fact that they took it, well, they lost pretty heavily. Definitely some gold going over to Shun that FPX regrets. Is that Fury going to be even a bigger problem?
Yeah, and we talk about how the late game for FPX can be big, but right now JDG have the ball in their court. If they continue to play the game out the way that it's been going, they're going to be in a very great position to take care of business in this first game. And that's something that they'd like to do, right? When you take a look at the nameplates and all, you should expect a JDG win. However, in terms of recent results, these teams have been very close the last time they faced off. Again, as we mentioned, FPX won this series 2-1. Look for another opportunity here, this time on to Scout, who has stepped up a little bit on the bot side, but he's not going to get punished this time around.
Yeah, he is hella tanky. And again, with the Pantheon, like, I do think that with this champion, it's important to win the front line, or be able to win the front line. I think that it's a game that's really difficult for him, going into a Scion, into a Galio, into a Callista. I really appreciate Pantheon's strength in the jungle, but I do think that he's been taken a little bit too early in drafts and too early in Fearless games, where, man, I look at this comp as Panth, like, yeah, the global's great, you can make fast plays, but how many positive interactions does JDG have into you? When playing into a Pantheon, I think it's something that he's going to really struggle with throughout this game.
Yeah, I mean, he got put behind pretty hard, even from level 1, and has looked for opportunities in various side lanes with his solo laners, but there's just not enough damage just yet to especially take down the beefy solo laners on JDG's side at this point in time. The Thunder Sky will help, but not nearly enough against already double Hollow Radiances that have picked by both Ala and Scout, and that means they're pretty unkillable on these side lanes. And that has given a lot of time and a lot of space for Shun to work in the enemy jungle and also, of course, on those neutral objectives. That's now 4 for 4 in terms of the full control here for JD Gaming as they get the Grubs, 2 Dragons, and then the Rift.
And again, like, taking that fight at the second Dragon, don't feel like FPX needed to. You're opting into fighting the third Dragon at worse conditions, right? Giving over some of that gold. I really think that it's going to take Rise at 2 items and really a 2 to 3 item plus game for them to find fights where they might be able to win it. So again, that Rise, Seraph's Evolve, really important for him. Gives him a lot more tankiness and a lot more power. Just given that champion has mana scaling and Seraph's a boatload of magic or mana and ability haste, which Rise needs in his kit.
Doesn't look like we're going to get to the second full item by the time the next dragon spawns. And remember, Cubby, JDG have the first 2 already in their hands. Certainly wouldn't want to give over a soul point, an infernal soul point at that, this early into the game. So FPX going to look for an answer here. However, a teleport coming through from Scout means that they have to back away from this corridor. And now Jwei gets knocked up by that Fate's Call. There's not much to fight for over the top side of the map, so the teleport basically was for a Scuttle Crab, and, you know, which isn't the worst thing in the world if you're FPX, but definitely you can see the amount of priority and the lead that JDG feel like they have, and FPX do look like they are playing from behind.
I mean, Kair's at least able to get bot prio before this Dragon spawns, as Sheer is going to make his way up to catch this top lane that Ala's about to put away. So we'll say it's kind of a late reset coming out from JD Gaming, and frankly, a couple tools burned they won't have for a potential Dragon fight. That's, you know, Fate's Call out, and then also the TP from Scout. So if FPX are able to get in here, which they have, they've gotten control, and Scout's kind of stuck. Rise deleted the wave yet again. FPX hoping that JDG walks in and face checks and maybe gives them even better conditions, as they have refused to start this objective. And it's going to lead to another fight over the mid wave, yeah. I think they're waiting for Sheer. Rumble, I mean, it would be nice to have, but of course Sheer does have teleport as well. So I think FPX, again, there's a real world where maybe they could start that objective, but instead, I mean, mid-wave killed and Rift Herald dropped, and FPX is here for the defense.
Another important note, not great at taking the dragon, but they're enough to take down missing. That's a great hook from Jwei. We'll find the first casualty here for FPX. as the Scion for Ala just runs all the way through the lane. Jwei flash dredge line will force Shun to popping a target a little early. So a 5v4 is open up for the map. No missing for the next 15 seconds. And FPX want to continue to look for this play. However, Jwei could be caught out. He gets taunted up by Scout, but there's not enough damage just yet. But Shun with a fadeaway Q will shut him down. But Shear's now overheated underneath the tier 1 turret. Looking to take Shun and Scout down. Rumwarp comes out. That Nefiri is now down for the count. And Shadow will land a stun to Ala. FPX find the fight that they want. A 3-for-1 will result in them heading towards the Dragon.
Yeah, and it all kicks off with the conviction of the engage onto missing. Jwei lands a dredge line, the immediate flash follow and bullet time drop. Took Renata and the hostile takeover out of the fight. Keep in mind, Fate's call was used to skirmish before to try and find a pick that Jwei was able to neutralize. And that tool being gone really started that positive snowball for FPX as again, missing. Thinking that he might be able to dip down into the river, was not able to, gets caught by a dredge line in Jwei. And then from here, Kara kind of holds the line in the front line with Sheer, was able to put down so much damage. As of course, this doesn't connect, but check out the rest of this fight, Graves. And Sheer, for me, him and Kara were the big winners. Of course, Jwei's going to get caught and go down. A decent equalizer, though, splits the rest of the fight. And look at this damage stack from the Rise and the Rumble. Able to do a lot of work in the back half of this fight. One out on the health bars. And one hard enough to take that dragon. Really big for that third dragon, denying that stacking and getting a lot of power in FPX hands where, again, we'd like to scale. They're going to have more damage in their comp later on.
And it was so close to even being better for FPX as both Scout and Peyz are about 500 HP at the end of that fight. We're able to barely run on out of there. And so FPX right back into this game. However, JDG, they feel that timer onto them, and so they're going to play a bit of a risky move starting up the Donicon. They know that they have the Ren for Peyz, but they're going to get their health bars chunked pretty bad.
Look, I don't think things are this grim for them later on, right? Like, this is a really aggressive start, of course. 50-50s are a little bit Callista favored, and Shadow going to walk in.
Yeah, he's already pushed away, doesn't have that Aegis anymore, so it will be the Otacon most likely going over to JDG. And now Jwei's cut out as well. The bullet time going to chunk all in a half, but nobody on JDG really at risk of getting taken down just yet. Fate's call has been called in, but it will not find any knockups as Missing will use it to retreat, and JDG get what they were looking for.
No flashes available to follow, and Shadow, that Grand Starfall is just coming off cooldown. So no Realm Warp to chase either. A good call from JDG. I mean, playing around some cooldowns there. I thought that was a little risky, but of course, those flips a little bit Callista favored, and they're able to ball off and secure that objective.
So it's a little bit of extra power in terms of the Spirit Petals now being unlocked for JDG. They'll be able to have that effect of the slow and the extra damage on takedowns as well. So in these later game extended team fights, that could mean the difference here for JDG when, remember, they're the team that has some levels of scaling, but maybe has some trouble dishing out damage at the end as we get later on.
I mean, those slows could be really nice for deathballing, which I really think JDG's comp needs to do. Again, they will get really tanky. There's going to be a lot of pins that are likely to be in FPX, but if FPX can get around those tanks and also have some ways to deal with tanks in their kit, you look at that Rumble, he's able to cook people with % health damage and percentage magic pen in his kit. That feels pretty good. Also, MF, that early LDR, I think that was the right call from Awesome this game. I like that one. Now Peyz. Okay, Flash Force, that's a win.
You can burn the Flash for just using that Grand Starfall. You'll take that every day. It does mean that FPX are marginally weaker if another fight does break out in the next little bit, but that Grand Starfall should be available for the next Dragon that does spawn. But FPX, I feel like at this point, will be very happy to try to contest.
Yep, $145 away. And so we'll spawn before the Baron. Like, we'll be where the focus is for each of our teams, as we'll see likely some resets come out here from JDG, and we'll see what item breakpoints that we can find. I like the fact that FPX really trying to stack and get access to that pen early on, just given how tanky a Scion Galio team is. Still think that if a fight were to break out here, again, just a champion strength at this time in a close game will be JDG favored. The circles that they can draw between a Galio W and a hostile takeover, I mean, that can buy enough time for Peyz to really stack up those spears and pump enough damage to get through a team. Whereas they got to find ways to deter Peyz from auto-attacking on that FPX side. So we'll see if they can at least successfully absorb and deter the engages we expect to see from JDG in this fight.
Not just Peyz who's strong right now. Shun picking up that Black Cleaver. 2 complete items for the Nefiri. Starting to snowball a little bit there, too. jumping forward onto Jwei, dishing out a little bit of damage. You can see the poke, the bleed that has its effect on the Nautilus here. Not going to have too much effect in terms of taking it down or making it be at risk of dying, but now with Jwei push back, Sheer's gonna have to flash away as underneath the tower, JDG go. The equalizer comes, but it's not nearly enough to take anybody down. All let the flash on out. He will survive, come out with the heal of missing, and it's now a 4v5 on the map opened up for JD Gaming.
Dropped the best equalizer he could, but you can see FPX, they were on reset. Both Jwei and Shadow coming out of base, and Grand Starfall just came off cooldown for Shadow. So we'll see if they're able to oh wow, they're using a Realm Warp. Okay, Peyz, he's got no flash.
Oh, we're full sending it onto that flashless Kalista. The stun finally connects, but Peyz is starting to glide. He's hop, skipping, and jumping all over FPX, and Scout will come in just for good measure. It's a double kill picked up for Peyz as the over-aggression from FPX results in 3 of their members going down, and 2 more maybe to follow.
Oh, no.
Scout goes in for the flash 2-man taunt, showing underneath the towers. He's going to try to find the kill on Awesome, and Awesome is down. It's a kill over to the Fury, and JDG have full control once again.
Care and Shadow play that fight way too quickly. It's almost like they thought hostile takeover was used, because if you Realm Warp into a hostile takeover, things can get ugly, and the flashless Peyz cleanse, and that was enough to get him out of the engage. JDG are able to deathball the rest of the fight and will take that soul point for themselves as they exit.
What looked like a very good opportunity for FPX to start their scale and to start to come alive. Erased in the span of just 5 minutes time, Cubby. It started with the Otacon, and then it started with this play here afterwards. At this point, you gotta cut your losses if you're FPX.
Jwei didn't join? What? Okay, that was interesting. I mean, if Jwei comes, that's a dredge line to join. That might just be enough to make sure that Peyz at least isn't able to auto-attack down. I cannot believe that Jwei didn't join. Of course, if you back-click out of Realm Warp, it tries to predict your movement, because I know that that's been a bug that we've had before that have created a long pause and potentially, a chrono break. But I gotta say, from that camera angle, kind of looks like Jwei was in the Realm Warp, and if he came, I do think that would have been a different fight. But as it stands, both Shadow and Care, being the only members to take that Realm Warp, led to an outnumbered and a little bit of an overextended engagement fight there.
However, we keep saying that FPX does have the damage to burn through this front line as we get later on into this one. We see Awesome nearing that 3rd item. Care going for a Void Staff 3rd because he knows there's a lot of resistance he's going to have to shred. Same with Sheer, who has gone for the 2nd item. I forget the name exactly, but it's the one that shreds a lot of that MR as well. That's going to do some extra DPS to both Ala and Scout as we get later into this one. But we're not there just yet, Cubby. And right now, JDG still have the spikes that they are willing to play around. Specifically, this 3-item Kalista has been unlocked for Peyz.
Well, we're gonna have to see. That's just a wait and see game here, Graves. Care.
We are.
He's waiting to see if he gets attacked in the side lane, right? Not gonna come through. It's a bummer. Anyway, JDG. I gotta say, I'm curious how aggressive they want to play around this Baron. The fact they have Kalista flip.
They were able to rip that Otacon so quickly, right? And maybe makes you think that they'd be willing to do the Baron just kind of on spawn. Now that they also are about 4,000 gold ahead. Obviously, they don't fully know that, but they see they have all bounties on their side. None on FPX's. I think they feel pretty comfortable at where the game state is right now. They don't feel comfortable enough to start up that Baron kind of on spawn. I think in general, you might be kind of in for the long game here, as JDG does have the chance to secure an Infernal Soul for themselves into an F in its time.
Care gonna secure that top outer turret for FPX. Again, more gold trying to come down. As Care with that very early Void Staff and a lot of early pen for FPX. Shadow is going to control word might actually be under threat here. Okay, not gonna be the case. Of course, Care was rotating back over. JDG really trying to slow this game down, Graves.
Here we go.
But, okay, here we go. That's gonna be spotted though right away.
See Sheer on the bottom side. He's going to immediately teleport to his tier 1 turret mid
Okay.
and join the rest of his team.
Whoa.
Oh, he Care! He jumps straight with the blast cone into a fully charged Q from Ala. And that is the mid laner instantly getting bursted down for FunPlus Phoenix. So JDG, they find their reward in the 5v4, and while it will cost them a couple of turrets mid, they should be able to pick up the Baron for themselves and try to put a stop to this one here. 3-man taunt will land from Scout, and now Awesome is forced to pop the bullet time a little bit early, but the hostile takeover is coming, and it's going to allow for everybody on FPX to be locked up. Sheer will fall, missing, picks up the gold.
It's a
disaster. And already Baron is in the hands of JD Gaming, and it's going to come at the cost of even more. Awesome will go down, and now Jwei and Shadow are on the run, but I don't know how far they'll be able to get here. Sean going to be jumping over the wall, look for the Pantheon, jumping in, but it's surely to be a lost cause. He Grand Star falls on out of there, but he'll leave the Nautilus to die. FPX fall apart at the seams as JDG now have full control of this game.
I mean, what better way to start a death ball than when Rise trampolines into an RKO from the team? It's JDG take care of Kerrigan rather quickly in that one and are able to chase down FPX in the long haul. You called it, Grapes. Last couple of fights and skirmishes been falling apart at the seams. As it was that Realm Warp that didn't collect the Nautilus too, was an aggressive play that JDG were able to easily turn. And then Kerr, again, that Blast Cone right into the waiting arms of Awa as he says, thank you very much. We're going to take down that shield, take down the Rise, and take down this Baron and the rest of your team. So what better way to start a death ball than with a 5v4?
Yeah, and that was a bit of an unlucky situation for Kerr, but also a really nice setup from Ala to make sure that he was in a good position to go for that. And now Scout going for more. They've already found Awesome, and Awesome is down. Peyz gets the kill, and Shun's diving onto the backline as we speak. Tier 1 turret, just the second priority here as blood is on the menu. A huge hostile takeover from missing underneath the tier 2, and that might just be the game right here. It is a clean ace picked up for JD Gaming as they make quick work of FunPlus Phoenix. They march into the base and they'll take game 1.
I mean, JD Gaming really waited for their prey this game. It was a couple of like fights they turned that created the scenario for them to find the death ball, Grapes. And what a death ball it was from JD Gaming as they cleaned this one up quickly. I mean, thinking to the big mistake, right? Hair taking that Realm Warp in with Shadow, the one that Jwei wasn't able to join. Going from that fight to end game that quickly, that's really well played by JD Gaming.
And so this is a little bit more of what we expected the last time these two teams faced off. A one-sided win for this super team that was formed at the start of 2025. But obviously it didn't work out the last time around. Remember that FPX won the series 2-1, so they did drop a game, although it was game number 2. But if this series continues the way that JDG was able to play that one out, Cubby, we could be in for a shorter one on the day.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, that was, I think, a decent draft and look from FPX. I mean, I do feel like that game's playable, but the way that FPX played it out, there's really only that one dragon fight they were able to successfully win and set up for. The rest of the fights, I feel like that second dragon they tried to fight, they weren't set up, tried to force it. That was poor. Tried to force the bot lane play. That got turned around instantly, right, by the side of FPX or JDG onto FPX. And man, just kind of surprised how quickly that one took a turn for the worse. As JD Gaming, we've had some questions about their form. I think that the early rotations from them and the looks they found later on, that was really nice for them to see. And some of the expectations that we have for the squad, again, in the top 4 and one of the top teams that we have hopes for in the LPL in terms of maybe competing for a championship or more than that on paper. Hasn't been the case for JD Gaming so far, but I want to see more looks like that, because if we do see that, then that's when this team's going to get going.
Again, it's been a tough stretch of games as of late. They're playing so many series back-to-back. You hoped that 2-0 against Weibo would spark something, and it looks like so far it has. This team is playing very cleanly, at least at the moment, in their current form. They look like they could take on anybody in the LPL, and it started with that victory here over FunPlus Phoenix. On FPX's side, though, some mistakes that we have seen from them at times really rearing their ugly heads. I think most notably Shadow had a bit of a rough one on the Pantheon. And there was really never an opportunity for him specifically to link up with Awesome and Jwei and really lock down Peyz, which has been the win condition for so many teams against JDG this year.
Yeah, that, and of course Kerr, the couple Realm Warps that he had were really kind of quickly snowballed the game outside of their favors. So I think that's a good call out. And yeah, we did see that, of course, that one positive play we saw in mid was a really good engage from Jwei and Shadow, able to sync up, take down missing out of the fight early on, right? But we saw Shadow get behind off of that level 1 from the Fury. We saw him flub a play against the Scion before they were able to connect and play into Ala. And then again, as a squad, FPX just kind of were chased down one by one. They gave the death ball comp the exact scenario that they wanted to snowball the game. And it's pretty tough to do that against a squad like JD Gaming.
and it looked so close for a long time. You saw that gold graph, Cubby, 20 minutes even. It was even, and that was after a pretty nice fight opened up by FPX, but I think just overall, the players on JDG's side did more than the players on FPX's side, and that's what resulted in this game going their way.
Yeah, again, I like the idea from JD Gaming. I think tanks plus Kalista kind of slept on, as if you get a forever fight, Kalista does really benefit from that. Actually scales into the game. She's able to stay alive and auto attack. So definitely a game where a lot of pieces were put around that Kalista to buy her space and enable Peyz to pop off. But frankly, I do think that Scout had a really nice game on the Galio. I'm not sure who's going to get the Pog this time around, but I definitely want to give kudos to Scout, who I have high expectations when it comes to him and this champion, and definitely met them, showed his prowess on this one.
Yeah, I really like the look from Scout overall. I feel like he was able to play with that aggressive style, and it worked out really well for them, and it ended up being a pretty good situation overall here for JD Gaming. We're waiting our player of the game here before we fully transition over to game number 2, Cubby, but overall FPX have a lot to look inward towards if they want to try to come back in this series and make sure they don't jump up to double-digit losses here in Group Ascent.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something where I think FPX sitting at 6th place, already out-kicking their coverage, but potential for JD Gaming. Again, this is a really hectic schedule they have, 7 best-of-3s in 10 days, and FPX definitely a team on paper that, given all the games that JD Gaming has, probably not prepping the most for this matchup, so opportunity to maybe catch them off guard. They were the ones that were caught off guard in that game 1. It's just a little bit disconnected on the day.
Yeah, you know, JDG, they've got a matchup against BLG tomorrow, so make sure you tune into LPL, as, again, just a grind for them overall. Their season ends in 5 days. They still got 3 series left to play after this one. BLG, NIP, and then Anyone's Legends. So real test for them overall to close out their season. If they can end on a high note, it would result in them locking in that top 4 spot, which would be very big for them, all things considered.
Yeah, and of course, JD Gaming, we'll have to see if we see the same JDG that we saw in this game 1 for the rest of the series, and hopefully tomorrow against BLG, who again have been on that heater ever since they got Beishwan in, as it's been... I feel like there's a name we can like call BLG that starts with Beishwan, as ever since they've gotten in, it's been 6-0. And ever since Beishwan joined the team, they just love gaming, you know? It's BLG next level. I was calling Knight BGL Knight because it's big game lover, because Knight always shows up and clutches up, you know? Like that could fit too. There's some ways we can play around with that.
Beishwan love gaming. Is that what you're saying? Beishwan love gaming?
Sure, something like that.
Maybe,
ever since he got Beishwan, they've loved gaming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
BLG on here again. Yeah. This will be a good matchup to set up JDG, of course, for that eventual match, which I think we're labeling the match of the week here for week 7 of LPL English. So make sure you tune into that coverage tomorrow. Again, still awaiting our player of the game, our MVP for game number 1 between JDG and FPX. And I mean, who do you have giving it to? I think Shun deserves a lot of credit for this, although I could see Scout getting it as well.
Shun was solid. Might just be Peyz. I actually thought Scout was quite good. I know he was kind of quiet early on. I thought Scout was quite good. It really was just kind of a close game for 20 minutes, and then JDG just like won really hard with the snowball. I think most of the snowball was actually forced by Scout though, so we'll give him some kudos for that.
All right. Well, we'll see if the broadcast agrees with us whenever they eventually fly that graphic up on the screen. Again, the most MVPs out of anybody here in these 10 series, or 10 players actually, was Jwei with 10. But Mystic is actually going to get it here.
Okay.
He made a couple of, I think, pretty big mistakes, specifically in that mid-game fight, which
he had a couple of thick hostile takeovers.
But yeah, as I was going to say, those ultimates at the end of the fight, or at the end of the game, really did help JDG as well. So shout out to Missing.
Yeah, of course, this was a big one. I think this one was kind of gifted over, but a really well-timed hostile takeover. As that circle later on, and of course, the potential for Renata plus Galio to really open things up for Peyz. We saw it be big for JD Gaming as they found that game 1 win and got their death ball going very quickly.
Yeah, and with that, see if they can take that one more, complete the sweep, or if FunPlus Phoenix can come back and make it a 3-game set like it was the last time around. But before we head into our brief intermission before the draft of game number 2, we want to give a big thank you to all of you, and specifically to our Elite Coffee and YouTube subscribers who help level up the show. A lot of the initial payments go into upgrading the broadcast, but a huge bulk of it pays on-air talent and content creators. You can subscribe to our coffee, it's linked in the chat, to unlock perks like early access to content and the ability to ask interview for questions for our unique on-site interviews. So again, link in chat for the coffee. Also receiving word, we got that video from JDG that we were talking about that Kelsey put together. We're going to show it to you guys on the way out. We'll be back in a couple of minutes with the Game 2 draft of FPX and JDG.